Have you ever felt the weight of time? Not the time that ticks on clocks, but the kind that drags, silent in forgotten places. Places where the past refuses to die. In New York, a city that never sleeps, there's a shadowed corner where progress never reached, where darkness swallows the light and whispers secrets that should never be heard. An abandoned industrial building in Brooklyn, a tomb of concrete and steel, holds something more than dust and rust, something ancient, something dangerous, something that waits. Welcome to Echoes of the Shadows, where the shadows unveil truths no one dares to face. I am your guide through the void, a voice echoing in the darkness, here to tell you a story that will seep into your mind and haunt your dreams. Today, I'll take you to a place where time is a prison, and the only way out is a price few are willing to pay. This is the story of 5 young souls, and the echo of a tomorrow they never should have seen. It was a cold, damp night in Brooklyn, the kind of night that chills the skin even before fear sets in, where the air feels heavy with secrets waiting to be uncovered. 5 students, driven by a dangerous mix of curiosity and recklessness, decided to explore an abandoned industrial building, a concrete monster that stood as a relic of a forgotten industrial past. Sarah was the leader, a practical and determined young woman, her eyes gleaming with a resolve that masked the doubts she carried, her steps firm but her heart racing with an unease she couldn't name. Mark, the skeptic, hid his insecurity behind biting humor, always ready to question everything, his sharp tongue a shield against the unknown. Emily, the shy photographer, saw the world through her camera, searching for beauty where others saw only ruins, her delicate fingers clutching the device as if it could protect her from what lay ahead. Jake, the tech-obsessed nerd, lived to unravel scientific mysteries, his mind brimming with theories about secret experiments, his excitement barely concealing the tremor in his hands. And Alex, the impulsive dreamer, saw every adventure as a chance to escape monotony, even if it meant risking everything. His carefree smile a stark contrast to the growing tension around him. Together, they stepped into the building, their nervous laughter echoing through the decaying halls, a sound that seemed to mock the silence that surrounded them. The walls were covered in ancient graffiti and water stains, layers of grime clinging to every surface like a second skin, the faded words of past intruders telling stories of their own, warnings perhaps that the group was too eager to ignore. The floor creaked beneath their feet, each step reverberating in the vast emptiness, a hollow sound that seemed to grow louder, as if the building were waking from a long slumber. The air reeked of rust and mildew, so thick it seemed to choke their lungs, a stench that carried the weight of decades of neglect, as if the building itself were exhaling its decay into their very souls. It was the kind of place that drew young thrill-seekers, those who felt the magic of New York had faded as they grew older, those who craved the rush of the unknown, unaware that some shadows are better left undisturbed. As they moved deeper into the labyrinth of corridors, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, the darkness pressing against them like a living thing. The flickering light of their flashlights cast eerie shadows on the walls, shapes that seemed to twist and writhe, as if the building were playing tricks on their minds. They passed by rusted machinery, its jagged edges glinting ominously in the dim light, remnants of a time when this place buzzed with life, now reduced to a graveyard of forgotten dreams. Old papers littered the floor, yellowed and brittle, some bearing faded blueprints of machines long since dismantled, others scrawled with frantic notes in a language none of them could read. The air grew colder with every step, a chill that seeped into their bones, and a faint hum began to fill the silence, a sound so low it was felt more than heard, vibrating through the walls like a heartbeat. They were about to discover that some mysteries are not meant to be unraveled, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. As they ventured deeper into the building, the darkness seemed to swallow them whole, the light from their flashlights barely piercing the shadows. Long, distorted shapes danced on the walls, moving in ways that defied logic, as if the building itself were alive, watching them with unseen eyes. The air grew heavier, laden with a palpable sense of dread that none of them dared to acknowledge, a weight that pressed against their chests, making each breath a struggle. Jake, always at the forefront, stopped suddenly, his flashlight illuminating something hidden behind a false wall, a panel so seamlessly integrated into the decay that it might have gone unnoticed by less curious eyes. It was a device, a relic from another time, crafted from black, opaque metal, cold to the touch, yet pulsing faintly, as if it were breathing. Symbols etched into its surface glowed intermittently, forming patterns that seemed to shift, mesmerizing and unsettling, like a language from a world beyond their own. To Jake, this was more than an object. It was the answer to questions he'd never known how to ask, a puzzle that called to his insatiable curiosity. Emily approached cautiously, her camera hanging around her neck, but something held her back from taking pictures, as if the device could sense her presence, its faint glow reflecting in her wide, fearful eyes. Mark, with his mocking tone, tried to dismiss the discovery, but his eyes betrayed the unease he felt, his usual bravado faltering in the face of something he couldn't explain. Before the others could stop him, Jake touched the symbols, his fingers trembling with a mix of excitement and dread, and a blinding flash erupted from the device, blinding them for a moment, the light so intense it felt like it burned through their very souls. When their vision returned, they were thrust into a sight no human should ever witness. New York was in flames, its skyscrapers crumbling in clouds of dust and fire, the once proud skyline reduced to a jagged silhouette against a blood-red sky. Crowds ran through deserted streets, their screams drowned by the chaos, their faces contorted in terror as they fled from something unseen. Deformed humanoid creatures roamed among the ruins, their bodies elongated and twisted, their faces morphed into grotesque masks of agony and hunger, their skin a sickly gray, streaked with veins that pulsed with a dark, unnatural light. Their movements were jerky, inhuman, and their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, hunting anything that breathed, their claw-like hands reaching out with a hunger that knew no end. It was the future, a dystopian future that seemed to cry out for help, a world where hope had been extinguished, leaving only despair in its wake. The vision ended as quickly as it began, but it left one thing clear. This was not just a premonition. It was a warning. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of their ragged breathing, each of them grappling with the horror they had just witnessed. The group realized too late that the building had changed, its very structure shifting around them like a living nightmare. The doors that had been open were now sealed, the windows barred shut, the walls seeming to close in around them, the air growing more suffocating with every breath, as if the building itself were trying to trap them within its decaying embrace. Panic began to take hold, a shadow creeping into their minds, feeding the fear that already consumed them, their once united front fracturing under the weight of their terror. Desperate to understand what was happening, they activated the device again, and the visions that came were even more detailed and personal. Mark saw himself dead in a dark alley, surrounded by shadowy creatures, his body mangled, his face frozen in a silent scream, blood pooling around him, reflecting the faint glow of a street lamp flickering like a dying heart. The creature's hollow eyes staring down at him with a hunger that chilled the soul. Emily saw her camera stained with blood, capturing images of herself dying in agony, her trembling hands snapping photo after photo, tears streaming down her face until the final image showed her lifeless body, the camera still clutched in her hand, its lens reflecting the twisted face of her killer. Alex saw himself aged and insane, muttering disjointed phrases about fixing the past, his hair white, his eyes wild, sitting alone in a crumbling apartment, surrounded by papers covered in frantic scribbles, his mind shattered by the weight of a future he couldn't escape. Sarah saw herself running alone, fleeing from the same creatures that had already taken the others, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her legs burning with exhaustion, the guttural growls of the creatures echoing ever closer, their shadows stretching long and menacing across the ground. But the worst was yet to come. In one of the visions, they noticed something terrifying. Their reflections in the mirrors had vanished, the glass showing nothing but an empty void where their faces should have been. There was nothing left of them in the present. Were they already living in that dystopian future, their existence erased from the timeline they once knew? The device, they began to realize, was no mere artifact. It was a relic of a forgotten experiment, a creation born in the shadows of the Cold War, when government sought to control the very fabric of time. Whispers of its origins spoke of a secret project in the 1950s, hidden deep within Brooklyn's industrial heart, where scientists meddled with forces they could not comprehend. They sought to peer into the future, to alter the course of history, but their hubris unleashed something they couldn't control, a rift in time that birthed the creatures now haunting the visions, beings born from the fractured threads of reality, feeding on the fear of those who dared to tamper with their domain. The building itself had been sealed off after the project's catastrophic failure, its existence erased from public records, but the device remained, a silent sentinel waiting for new victims to claim. Paranoia consumed the group, eroding the bonds that held them together, their fear turning them against one another in a desperate bid for survival. Mark accused Jake of causing it all, his usual sarcasm replaced by raw anger, his voice trembling with a rage born of terror, while Jake defended himself, the guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders, his mind racing with the realization of what he had unleashed. Emily, in a panic, noticed her hands beginning to fade, her skin turning translucent, as if she were dissolving into the air, her desperation echoing in her trembling voice, her camera slipping from her grasp as she stared at her vanishing fingers in horror. Sarah tried to stay calm, leading the others in a desperate attempt to escape, but the environment around them kept shifting, the building becoming a nightmarish maze that defied all logic. The walls of the building seemed to melt, revealing scenes of the apocalyptic future mixed with flashes of the present, the past and future, colliding in a chaotic dance of despair. The humanoid creatures began to chase them, emerging from the shadows like ravenous specters, their movements unnatural, their eyes glowing with a cold light, their mouths stretching impossibly wide to reveal rows of jagged teeth, their guttural growls echoing through the halls like a chorus of the damned. The group stumbled through the shifting corridors, their flashlights flickering as if the darkness itself were trying to extinguish their last hope, the hum of the device growing louder, a sinister rhythm that seemed to mock their every step. Jake, in a moment of clarity, realized the device could reverse the flow of time, but at a terrible cost, a sacrifice. Without hesitation, he took on the burden, configuring the device to send a message to the past, a warning about the catastrophic event to come, his hands trembling as he worked, knowing that this act would likely be his last. As he did, the others managed to escape the building, or so they thought, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the night as they fled into the streets of Brooklyn, the cold air biting at their skin, the weight of their fear still clinging to them like a second shadow. Sarah ran through the streets, her heart pounding, glancing over her shoulder with every step, the fear still clinging to her like a shadow, her mind racing with the horrors she had witnessed. When she reached home, she found an old photograph, taken weeks earlier, its edges yellowed with age, as if it had been waiting for her all along. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, was a message from Jake. Don't trust the clock. Time is a prison, and sometimes the only way to escape is to accept that we will never truly be free. The echo of a dark tomorrow is not just a vision. It's a chain that binds those who dare to defy it. Sarah and the others thought they had escaped, but did time truly let them go? Or are they still trapped, running from a future that has already caught up with them, their every step haunted by the echoes of a tomorrow they cannot outrun? Days later, Sarah found herself unable to sleep, the ticking of her clock sounding louder than ever, each second a reminder of Jake's warning. She began to notice strange things. Her reflection in the mirror seemed to flicker, as if it were not truly her, and the streets of Brooklyn felt emptier, the shadows longer, as if the city itself were holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The photograph remained on her desk, a silent sentinel of the nightmare she had lived, and every time she looked at it, she swore she could hear the faint hum of the device, a sound that followed her into her dreams, whispering promises of a future she could not escape. Here at Echoes of the Shadows, we bring new tales of terror every week, straight from the shadows to haunt your nights, to remind you that the darkness is always watching. What is your greatest fear? Would you have the courage to face it to change the future? Or would you be lost in the echo of a tomorrow that should never exist? Leave your comments below. I want to know what you would do. What haunts you in the silence of the night? And if you want more stories that will keep you awake, that will make you question what lurks in the future, subscribe to Echoes of the Shadows and hit the bell. The shadows are waiting, and they know what you fear.